All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode of Riding Shotgun with Charlie. This is one of the pit stops that we are doing here at the NRA annual meetings in 2026 in Houston. And I want to thank the NRA for having the Voices of the Second Amendment Media Row, because this is pretty exciting, and it's a buzz with a lot of content creators that are podcasters and YouTubers and video folks and all sorts of really cool things. So I am honored to have with me on this pit stop, we have David Cole, who is... You're an instructor. You were telling me so much stuff. I'm like, dude, this is all, and I'm like, what do you do? And you started listing all this stuff down. I'm like, wait a second, we only have so much time.
Trades and master of none, but
I don't think so. So the first time I remember hearing your name is you were doing the self-defense gun stories.
Self-defense gun stories with Rob Morse.
Yeah,
I went that for several years, and I just recently went back because Rob kind of stood it down, and I'm like, how long did we do that, and how many episodes was I on? And it was, I want to say like 6 or 7 years, and I think I was his second most regular guest host, and I had 50-some episodes I did with him.
Wow, that's quite a bit.
And it goes to the firearms instruction because for listeners that might not know, that was a podcast where we took stories out of the news of defensive gun use and talked about some good things, bad things, kind of broke them down and figured out where maybe the defender could have done better, where they did really well.
Yeah.
And to try and educate concealed carriers from some real world incidents. So it was a lot of fun.
This is what I thought was really cool. It was very informative. You would hear about the stories on the news, and then a month later it'd pop up on one of his shows. Right. And that was really cool. And the good guy doesn't always win, right? Which is true. It ended up in this is pretty wild to me. It ended up in the number 2 in the top 2% of all podcasts.
It did end up ranking up pretty high at one point. And Rob sent me some numbers on it one time. I was like, really? Okay. Well, that's very cool. But okay. Yeah. And going back even farther, so where that grew out of is where I got my whole start in this digital gun media world is with Ken Blanchard.
Oh, the black man with a gun.
Had blackmanwithagun.com for years. And I was just talking to John Petrolino and telling him the story that it started out. I was a consumer of the digital gun media, and I was a listener to Ken's podcast. And one day he put out a call for writers to help him with a website. He was standing up, Gun Rights Magazine, which was strictly on gun rights issues. Mm-hmm. And I'd written a few samples just myself. I like to write. That's how I get things out a lot. And I had some stuff, and I emailed him and said, here's some samples of what I've written. What do you think? And he emailed me back within probably an hour and said, can I go ahead and post these? And I'm like, awesome. Well, yeah, sure. And kind of the rest is history from there. I wrote for Ken for a lot of years, both on Gun Rights Magazine and then when he rolled it into blackmanwithagun.com. Mm-hmm. And from there, met Rob and got rolled into self-defense gun stories, and now have my own website, deltabravocharlie.com. Ken kind of stepped away from the gun rights world, so I just kept going.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That is cool. And you've got a lot of experience as an instructor.
Yeah. As an instructor, I've taught a lot of concealed carry in Ohio and Kentucky. I live in Kentucky, very near Cincinnati, so cross-border thing.
Right.
I've since then let my Kentucky concealed carry instructor expire, but I probably taught for 10 or 12 years. And I like to say that one of the things I learned, because I'm not just the teacher, I'm the learner too. You learn when you teach. And I taught to a lot of people who really had very little gun experience and gun knowledge. But what I found out is that most average people are going to do the right thing. They're smart. They can handle it. Where we hear the anti-gun media a lot of times talking about, you need all this specialized training and everything, and you got to, be SEAL Team 6 to defend yourself with a firearm. It's just not true.
Yeah.
And, I taught people from housewives to lawyers to college professors to mechanics, and they're all just normal people, and they all did just fine. They really did. And so it really kind of woke me up to a lot of this thing about a lot of elite training. It's great, and you should get training if you can.
Yeah.
And more is always better, and it's fun. I recommend it. But the average person with just a little bit of knowledge can really do a lot. And most of them want to do well. They're good people, and they want to do the right thing. So it makes teaching them a pleasure.
For sure. The what was I thinking? Everybody thinks that you got to be a police officer or SWAT, like you said, and it's to me as a guy that's an instructor, I like to. I did hear somebody say that the safest place to be when the police are involved in a shooting, the safest place to be is in front of the police.
Well, and that's one thing I learned being a police officer. And I was only a cop for about 5 years, but I was on SWAT and I was a firearms instructor there. And on the SWAT team, I was pretty decent with our SIG pistols. I was really good with a shotgun, and I was surgical with the MP5. And I thought I was really good.
Yeah.
And then later on, after I wasn't law enforcement anymore, I started shooting USPSA.
Oh, that's cool.
U.S. Practical Shooting Association, shooting competition.
Yeah.
And just doing that, I'm a way better shooter now than I was then.
Really?
I'm a much better shooter now just as a recreational, competitive shooter than I was when I wore a badge.
Well, this is the thing. Like I had, and it's not near the same. I get it.
Yeah.
Like all the experiences I have are nothing compared to what everyone else has. But they're mine, and I like to tell people I can tell them really well.
Yeah.
So I got a phone call one day from somebody, and starts asking me if I work with new shooters, and I say yes, I do. And he's like, I don't know, within a minute and a half, he comes out and says he was a SWAT officer in the area, and he only shot at the academy. He shoots twice a year.
Yeah.
And he didn't do well on his qualification, and he, wanted to learn how to shoot. So legit, I found out what gun he was shooting. I bought some 45 caliber A-zooms, and we did the ball and dummy trick.
Right.
And he's shooting low and left, right? Low and left. He's like, I said, "Are you pushing the gun down?"
Yeah.
And he's like, "Are you sure?" I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I put the dummy rounds in, did the ball and dummy trick. We got a bang, bang, click, and then he jerks the gun down. I'm like, "There's the issue."
Right.
And I prescribed some dry fire to him, and then I ran into him 6 months later, and he's like, "Oh my God, dude, the dry fire totally worked. This stuff is awesome."
Yeah.
So police officers, they might get the training, they don't keep it up.
Right.
And we all know it's a perishable skill.
I mean, I would be the first to agree, having been a police officer, that most cops are not especially good shooters and not necessarily gun guys.
Yeah.
They're the exceptions. They're the SWAT guys. They're the guys that actually go out and train and work on it. But when I was a police officer in my agency, you could go to the Armor once a month and get a box of 50 rounds and go out and shoot at a local gun range that worked a deal with. You could just go shoot.
Yeah.
And most guys wouldn't do it. Free ammo. And they wouldn't go shoot it. So those of us that like to shoot, we'd always get the guys say, "Did you go get your box of ammo this month from Chuck?" And they're like, "No." So we'll go get it and give it to me.
Right.
And we collect up enough ammo to get out and go have a good range session. But a lot of them just never took advantage of it. And I was joking with somebody just yesterday. I'm like, I wish I had $1 for every police officer that showed up at a USPSA match and shot one match and was never seen again. Because it's humbling.
Oh,
and there's
absolutely.
some really outstanding shooters out there, and most of the time you're not one of them.
Right.
But it's a great place to get better and have some fun, and it's made me a better shooter. And again, and like we're talking about, it's a reality check for how good I really wasn't as a cop. Thought I was, but not really.
Yeah. It's also interesting to me when people who are instructors try to push out there that, I'm not going to take a class with you. I'm going to take one from a police officer. That sounds cool.
Right.
They don't have the same rules we have to follow. They can carry openly. We can't or shouldn't. It's different.
Yeah, and they face different threats. We talk about this a lot in self-defense gun stories on the podcast is, the problem that the average citizen faces most of the time in self-defense shooting is actually a pretty simple problem. Mm-hmm. You're getting robbed, you're getting physically assaulted, something like that. You don't have to, as a police officer does, roll up and figure out who the bad guy is. You know exactly who the bad guy is.
Right.
You know exactly where they are and exactly who needs to get shot.
Mm-hmm.
The police officer has to figure all that out on the fly.
Yep.
And that is a more difficult problem. But for us, it's just citizen concealed carriers. Usually it's not that big a problem, and you don't need to be SEAL Team 6 to solve it.
You don't. I was just talking to someone that said that he had a woman call. I was talking to Tom Gresham, and he had a woman call into his radio show years ago that was in an abusive relationship, and she called to just thank him for doing the show and turning her on to firearms and giving her some sort of an education. And then she said, this saved my life. Thank you very much. He's like, hold on, we got to talk a little bit more. And turns out that she was in a very abusive relationship, like broken bones sort of stuff. And she got up and moved away. Her husband found out where she was and went and beat the door down. Ended up going into the house. She fired how much ever ammunition she had. She didn't hit him once, but he never came back. And it's kind of a strong deterrent.
Yeah. And again, and I like to, I raise a lot of eyebrows when I say this a lot of times that, and a lot of people in the gun world say, oh, you need training, you need training, you need training. Emphasis on the word need. And just like we were talking earlier, you don't need to be SEAL Team 6. And it's great. If you can go to gunsight, go to gunsight. If you can go to Thunder Ranch, go to Thunder Ranch and get that training. All of it makes your odds better of surviving an encounter. But if you look at the numbers, depending on whose numbers you believe, there's anywhere on the low end of 500,000 defensive gun uses a year to maybe 2.5 million, depending on whose numbers you believe.
Right.
But if, let's say there's 1 million, let's just pick in the middle, there's 1 million defensive gun uses a year. How many of those people do you think had any training beyond maybe a basic concealed carry class?
Yeah, totally.
Carl Wren's the only one I know that has done any numbers at all, and he thinks probably, and you don't know for sure because a lot of this isn't captured, but maybe about 1%. And yet, when we look at those, most of the time the defender doesn't go to jail, and they manage to save their own life. They won. So, to me, just the numbers tell me that you don't need so much training to be able to defend yourself with a gun. Again, it's a good thing, but the beauty of a gun as a defensive tool is it's really easy to operate. Right. They really are. They, as Sam Colt said, the great equalizer, right?
Absolutely.
Fear
no man, no matter his size.
Your 95-pound grandma is just as dangerous as a 250-pound linebacker.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's a tool that everybody can use. I do some martial arts, and we use the sword a little bit there, and it takes a lot of skill and a lot of training to get decent with a sword. It doesn't take nearly as much to get decent with a gun.
Right.
And that's the beauty of it, I think.
Yeah.
But again, disclaimer: this is not me saying don't go get training. Absolutely do if you can.
Right.
But it's to make people. I worry that too much of the drum beating of you need training might discourage some people from gun ownership because they feel like, well, I want the gun to save my life, not to be my life.
Oh, that's a good line.
Right. Yeah, come up with one every once in a while.
Let's write that down.
But and I get that because I like to shoot but I don't get to shoot as much as I'd like to.
Yeah.
I've got a job. There's financial limitations. I call it, the economics of training. Sometimes it's time, sometimes it's money, things like that.
Yeah.
And none of us, I don't think, get to shoot as much as we'd like to.
Of course.
So I wouldn't want anybody to be discouraged from gun ownership because they're like, well, gosh, I can't go to gun sight for a week.
Yeah.
It's great if you can, but you don't really have to.
You don't have to. You do have to, and this is what I see, I hate saying this, lacking in my own teaching, is I teach licensing courses, and we just have to show them how to load and unload and have them load and unload. And that's it. There's no fundamentals of shooting. There's no stance. There's no grip. There's none of that sort of stuff. It's just, here's how you load a gun. Here's how you unload a gun. Here's the gun safety rules. Here's ammunition.
Right.
Like, the bulk of what I teach is the NRA's home firearm safety class.
Right.
So there's no shooting, there's no gun handling or anything like this. And I am afraid, it's taken me a while to realize this, but I'm afraid that if you take what the state says is going to be good, it's not good enough. Right. It's always the bare minimum, but people think that's plenty because, well, the state says this is what I need.
Yeah.
That's what I should do.
And I would, again, encourage people to get all the training you can. But again, don't let the fact that you can't go out to a week-long training course stop you either. Yeah. There's a lot of good information out there in the digital world, YouTube and everything. Of course, you have to apply some discretion about whose training information you trust and who you don't. But there's a lot of reputable sources out there that you can go to and you can learn. You can read. There's books, good old books are still there. They have a lot of good material in that can help you. I'm a big fan of Andrew Branca's Law of Self-Defense book. I used to give copies away in my classes. We'd have a little shoot-off at the end of class, and winner would get a book.
That's awesome.
And I had that, and I had Kathy Jackson's Cornered Cat, and I think one of Masad Ayoub's books, and, winner could pick a book.
That's cool.
And, because the legal's a big part of it. But when I taught in Kentucky and Ohio, it was much the same as you described with A lot of it is the legal stuff. A lot of it is basic safety stuff, and it's very basic. And of course, people that have never been around guns definitely need that.
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
It's good, definitely good. But just talking about the skill to get somebody off you if you're being mugged, robbed, raped, it's not a difficult problem. Better is always better.
Yes,
that's why it's a word. But I would want to encourage people to not let the fear of not being able to keep up with a lot of training keep them from gun ownership, just like we're saying.
Yeah. There's plenty of things. It's not that these should be the only thing that you do.
Right.
But there's plenty of tools that are out there.
Yeah.
Whether it's the Mantis or straight up old school dry firing.
I recommend dry firing all the time. My current job, I'm a supervisor. I'm management over a federal security guard force for a federal building where I live in Kentucky. And I see guys struggle with our qualification. We have to qualify twice a year, and it's very clear that some of them, that's the only time they shoot, to be polite about it. And right there on the line, there's not much you can do to help them because it's just qualification. But when I see somebody struggling, usually I'll pull them off and say, you need to do dry fire.
Yeah.
And you just like you said, you don't need a special tool. If you've already got the gun, you can do it. Modern guns, you can dry fire. It's not going to hurt them, no matter what anybody tells you on the internet.
Yeah.
It's not going to hurt them. You can practice your trigger press. You can practice a lot of your manipulations, your draw stroke,
all this stuff. I talked to somebody who bought a gun, and I told her she should drive. It was my older sister, so she doesn't listen to the show, so that's fine. But she was living in South Carolina. She bought a gun. The fun stuff is I said, "What did you get?" And she said, "A purple one." And I'm like, "Okay, do you have a caliber?"
We're gonna need more than that,
right? Like, give me a caliber or a brand or something useful.
Right.
So I told her another friend of mine was doing a little online dry firing, and she should check it out. And she's like, "What's dry firing?" I'm like, "Well, dry firing is shooting the gun without any ammunition in it." And she's like, "Well, why do I want to do that?" And I'm like, "Well, she can practice sight alignment and trigger press." And she's like, "Well, okay, whatever." Right? Then she takes a lesson with somebody, and then she goes shooting a few times, and then so she's like, "What does the dry fire do?" I said, "The dry fire helps you work on the sight alignment and trigger press, so that when the gun recoils, you're not pushing it forward." And she's like, "Oh, is that why the first couple shots I fire are really good and then it gets worse?" That's why, because you're not used to, you're thinking, oh my, at first you're just looking at the sights and the trigger, worrying about the sights and the trigger. And I said, then after it goes bang, you start to be more concerned about that. Then you start pushing the gun down.
Right. And one of my very first professional training courses I did years ago with the late Louis Auerbach, and he talked about shooting is very simple. All you got to do is put the sights on the target and press the trigger without moving the sights.
Sounds simple.
And it's absolutely true.
Yep.
Doesn't mean it's easy, but it's very simple. And if you can boil it down to that in your head, it really takes a lot of that away. And like I said, with my guys at work that are having trouble shoot, recommend them dry fire. I'll tell them, say, go home and dry fire. Put the ammo in another room, and you can do all the trigger presses you want, and it doesn't cost anything.
Yeah.
It's free.
That is tactically frugal, is what I call that.
Yeah, it's a good one. Yeah, but you drive, the Mantis, I picked up one of the Titan X pistols just a couple of months ago, and it's really, really a nice thing, and they're not terribly expensive.
Right.
And any training, and it's just another fancy way to do dry fire.
Yeah, it is.
It gives you a lot of feedback.
It gives you feedback, which is really cool.
But we see guys that have that trouble all the time, and dry fire is what I pound into their heads.
Yeah. It really is super important.
Yeah,
for sure. What else? How can people? Let's wrap things up here.
Okay.
How can people find you and all the stuff you're doing, David?
Well, I'm still. I'm not a podcaster. I'm an old school banging out pixels with a keyboard on DeltaBravoCharlie.com is my website. That's where I write on mostly Second Amendment issues, get a little political and talk about gun rights. But also on occasion I'll have an outdoor adventure, a hunting trip somewhere, and I'll write that up. Just went to Kansas for a pheasant hunt last fall.
Oh my gosh, that's
great fun. I'll sometimes write about just straight political stuff and maybe just some life stories.
That's cool.
DeltaBravoCharlie.com.
Bravo Charlie.
It's just like it sounds. Spell it out. All one word.
No fancy spellings, nothing tricky.
Yeah, and it was great talking to you, Charlie.
Well, the pleasure was mine. I'm glad we get to do this.
Definitely.
I know we talked about trying to do it last year, but things get crazy and hectic, and
it gets busy.
Yeah, I appreciate this.
But it's the best thing about this show to me is the people that I get to talk to, and the guns and gear are all nice, but the people are what make it.
It's so I find that I find myself stuck in the voices of the Second Amendment area, and this is like my 2-block radius,
right.
and this is it. Right, I hit these areas. I haven't seen anything else. I haven't seen anything else, and I'm okay with that. I get to see my people. I get to connect with new people. And I absolutely love that.
That's the best reason to be here, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Awesome. All right, well, listen, David, thank you very much for being on the show.
Oh, thanks for having me, Charlie. Enjoyed it.
The pleasure was mine. We want to thank the NRA for having us here at the Voices of the Second Amendment at the NRA annual meetings in Houston, Texas, 2026. We're going to put some links to David's stuff below, and thank you guys for listening to the show. If you enjoyed it, please share with your friends, because that is how we get the stagecoach across America. We'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.